How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Hot Takes with Holmes podcast edition. My name is Blake Holmes, and stick around with me as today I'm going to be talking about the recent action around the NFL, NCAA, and the National Basketball Association Worlds. I hope you all enjoyed the music. I actually downloaded a royalty-free track off of purpleplanetmusic.com, so this will be playing throughout the intro. So if this is something that you want to see in the future, be sure to let me know down in the comments of our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. And speaking of those, as always, if you like what you hear on the show, then be sure to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us on both sites at Hot Takes with Holmes. Of course, as I mentioned before, various updates about the show, our past broadcast, even this broadcast, of course, with them being the podcast edition, will be going live on our YouTube channel, and we will notify you on our Facebook page whenever they are going live. Another thing as well is we are very close to finding out what time we are going to be going live on Radio Free Radford in the upcoming spring semester, so be sure to like our Facebook page to be able to keep up with that and for us to let you know when we will be going live on the station during the semester. So of course, with that out of the way, let's get started. Starting like we always do with NCAA basketball, we're going to talk about the Radford Highlanders to start off the show. And after a successful week, they are currently sitting at 9-6. Of course, right before New Year's, they did take that loss to Maryland, a Big Ten school with a big pedigree. We know that Maryland is typically a basketball school, and they showed it. Radford goes in a tough environment, loses 78-64. Travis Fields Jr. with 22 in that game. And then this past week has been successful defending the home floor in two different occasions. Morris Hill came to Radford on Tuesday, and Radford won a resounding victory, 80-51. Devontae Holland with 16 in that game. Ed Polite Jr., of course, with 9 rebounds. And then against Longwood on Saturday, they got a win as well, 71-64. Carlik Jones with 24 points in that game and 6 assists, so a good game from Carlik Jones and Travis Fields Jr. putting in 8 boards as well. They will be taking on South Carolina Upstate and Presbyterian. The next 3 games, I believe from here on out, it will be Big South play, which is as big as ever because when you're a school that's the size of Radford, of course, you have to win your conference to get into the postseason. So these games are crucial to get a good spot for the Big South tournament that will be coming in, of course, February. But that's going to do it for Radford. Of course, they're in a decent position. They'll have to start winning their games in the Big South as well as start off well with a 1-0. Again, win over Longwood. And talk about the NCAA as a whole, the top 5 rankings. They came out just today, and as of recording this at 2:28 p.m., we do have Duke at number 1, Michigan at number 2. Again, Michigan 15-0. They've been impressive this year. I'm kind of supporter that they need to be the number 1 team in the nation because they are undefeated right now. I know Duke, they lost to Gonzaga. They are a fantastic basketball team, but they're fabulous freshmen. We know all that by now. Zion Williamson's becoming an icon in the sport. But of course, Michigan undefeated. They've beat some decent teams right now, and they're sitting there at 15-0. I would say put them at the number 1 spot until they lose. Then Duke has every right to be there. But of course, I'm not the committee, so Michigan sits at 2 behind Duke at number 1. Tennessee is right behind Michigan at 12-1 at the number 3 spot. Again, similar team, some tough teams they've beaten this year. Only team they've lost to is the Kansas Jayhawks. Number 4 is UVA, the Virginia Cavaliers. They are 13-0, and UVA seems to do this every year. They go 13-0, and then when they get to ACC play, they may drop a game or two, but they are always impressive when it comes towards the end of the year. Virginia, their defense, there's not much else that you could say about it. And number 5 is Gonzaga, sneaking their way back into the top 5 with 2 losses so far on their record. I believe one of them was to Villanova and the other one was to Tennessee. So 14-2 at number 5. The biggest drop this week, Nevada, dropping all the way down from the number 5 spot to the number 6 spot, or the 6th spot to the number 10 spot. My apologies. 14-1. They look like they were going well. And then I believe it was New Mexico beat them by almost 30 points in a win the other day. So Nevada taking a big tumble. Virginia Tech also in the top 10, jumping from number 10 to the number 9 team in the country. They are 13-1 at the moment. And so far throughout the season, we have some teams that are separating themselves as some championship caliber teams, some March Madness caliber teams. And Virginia Tech proving they may be one that can fight in the ACC more than people may have been expecting. Moving on to the NFL, it's playoff time. It's if you're in it, it's your favorite time of year. If you're not, then it's your least favorite time of year. I happen to be in the latter category this time, but still, some exciting wild card action. We saw on the first game of the wild card round, the Indianapolis Colts really dominated the Houston Texans in Houston. Colts winning 21-7. Andrew Luck was masterful. Their defense was really what impressed me. After talking about how bad that defense has been all year long, they pulled together, and they have been really they have been exceeding expectations for really the better part of the second half of the season now, and they went 21-7 in Houston. They will go on to face the Kansas City Chiefs. So what did that mean for the other the AFC team on Sunday? Excuse me. That would have been the Los Angeles Chargers and the Baltimore Ravens. The Los Angeles Chargers held the Baltimore Ravens at one point in the third quarter to they had 6 passing yards total. The Los Angeles Chargers defense was phenomenal. Of course, Lamar Jackson in the fourth quarter put together a little bit of a comeback, but on a potential game-winning drive, he did get. There was a strip sack, and the Chargers did recover. Of course, Lamar Jackson 4 fumbles in the game against the Chargers, and Phillip Rivers always great. Even when the rushing game was struggling, Los Angeles gets it done on the road. So yes, in the AFC, both road teams beat the home teams in the wild card round, and so we have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Los Angeles Chargers will be traveling to Foxborough to take on the New England Patriots. In the NFC on Saturday, of course, another big game, Seattle and Dallas. The final score of this game was 24-22 in favor of the Cowboys. The Seattle Seahawks did, right before the half, lose their kicker in Sebastian Janikowski. He did pull a hamstring, so he was not able to come out, and it was revealed that their punter was not able to really kick a set field goal. In fact, he was better at drop kicking field goals than he was actually taking a set field goal. So, of course, what they ended up doing was they just went for 2 and they went on all fourth downs. On all fourth downs when they got into field goal range because they couldn't punt it. So, Seattle put up a decent fight. It came down to, again, an onside kick that they had to drop kick, and it just wasn't a good kick, obviously, and Dallas recovered it with ease. Dak Prescott, phenomenal. Ezekiel Elliott, phenomenal. And the Cowboys get it done at home, 24-22, in a thrilling game. Also, and even more thrilling than that game was Sunday at 4:40. It was the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Chicago Bears in Soldier Field. Chicago had a chance to win the game after a great drive by Nick Foles to score a touchdown and take a 1-point lead in the game. They set themselves up. The Bears just needed to make a 47-yard field goal. Cody Parkey lines up, and when he kicked it, it was revealed at first. No one really knew he kicked it. It went to the left. It bounced off the left upright, off of the crossbar. No good. The Philadelphia Eagles win the game and advance to the next round. Of course, it was revealed after the game, though, that the field goal that Parkey tried was tipped. And for those that don't know, whenever a defender can get a hand on a kicked football, it can change the direction. It can alter that ball in so many different ways. It's not even funny. So, Cody Parkey received a lot of backlash, a lot of hate for that missed field goal, but ultimately it was the tip. I'm not entirely sure who it was that actually got the tip, but it was the tip that really almost probably saved the Eagles season and kept the defending champions in the playoffs. So to recap, the Dallas Cowboys, they will be traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Rams, and they will play on January the 12th, where that'll be Saturday at 8:15, and then the following day, it'll be the Philadelphia Eagles going to the Superdome to take on the New Orleans Saints at 4:40. So, big games coming out this weekend. Some big surprises. Of course, as I said, Indianapolis surprised me the most. I knew they were a hot team, but didn't expect 21-7, 21-0 lead for the longest time against the Texans on their home field. I didn't expect that type of hot. The Chargers, I figured they were a battle-tested and ready team. They had already seen the Lamar Jackson show once, so they were going to know how to neutralize it, and they did just that, beating them at 23-17. And of course, that was with a comeback. It was actually, I believe it was 23-3 before the Ravens had 2 late scoring drives. Cowboys were impressive, and again, the Eagles. I'm a firm believer in the chances that the Eagles have when Nick Foles is at quarterback. Of course, the toughest task they may have had all season long coming up in the Superdome against the Saints in the playoffs. But of course, Nick Foles, he's been impressive in the postseason the past 2 years, of course. So my predictions for this week, the week by week predictions is going to be a short one. Of course, this is only 4 games. So we have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Kansas City Chiefs at home. The Colts, again, the hottest team in the league. Really, I can't really think of a team that's been as hot as they have, besides maybe the New Orleans Saints. But here we get into it. I still think that the Kansas City Chiefs win this game. I think that. Now, of course, this is worth noting that this will be I believe it will be Mahomes' first career playoff start. So there may be some nerves there, but of course, playing in front of your home crowd with the number one seed in the AFC, I like the Chiefs to do just enough. It's going to be a shootout of a game, and it's going to be close, high scoring. But I'm going to say it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs that take the win, and I'm going to say a score of 38-35. The Los Angeles Chargers and the New England Patriots. As much as I would love to see the Los Angeles Chargers go in and beat the New England Patriots, because I am a firm believer in this Chargers team. I think Philip Rivers has what it takes. Melvin Gordon, Josh Jackson out of the backfield, and Keenan Allen in the receiving game. The Chargers have what it takes. Casey Hayward in the secondary, but New England at home during the playoffs has been historically one of the greatest teams in NFL history. So I'm going to say the Patriots win this game. Patriots only favored by 4.5. I almost think that's a little bit too low, but of course this could be a game. Again, this is the type of game that either the New England Patriots win by more than 2 touchdowns, or the Chargers could come in and even win the thing. But I like the Patriots to beat the Chargers this weekend and advance the AFC Championship for what seems like the 42nd time. In the NFC, we have the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams. Jared Goff has not looked like his MVP form that we saw earlier in the season, but when you have the amount of weapons that the Rams do, when you have the defense that they do, you're gonna be. I think they handle business against the Cowboys, who just lost Alan Hearns to a horrific injury in the Seattle game. Rams get the win, go to the NFC Championship. However, this is my upset of the week. I like the Eagles to beat the New Orleans Saints at home. Again, tough task. Very, very tough. And odds are the Saints, they should handle their business against a still kind of depleted Eagles team. But I had to pick one upset for the week, and I think that Nick Foles getting a win in the way he did against Chicago, against that fantastic defense. I'll say it now. New Orleans' defense is not as good as what Chicago, in my opinion, had the best defense in the league. So, for Nick Foles to go in composed under pressure against the rabid crowd in Soldier Field, I don't think the Superdome's going to do that to him. I think he gets the win for the Eagles here. And Doug Peterson actually asked him, some reporters asked him what he thought about Nick Foles under pressure, and he said it's a scary type of calm that you sometimes wonder if he even has a pulse. So the fact is, he's calm under pressure. He knows how to handle himself when the spotlight's on him and on his offense. And I think the Eagles get a win here in the Superdome. Which, of course, if I were to be correct again, purely up speculation, that could be completely wrong, it would be the Kansas City Chiefs and the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship, of course, in Arrowhead. And the Patriots did beat the Chiefs earlier this year, but that was in Foxborough. And then on the NFC side, we would have the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending champion Philadelphia Eagles, traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. So, a lot of action coming up in the upcoming week, and that's something we'll have to look out for as well. So, again, be sure to tune in on Saturday and Sunday nights for those games. And on to another big game, of course. The NCAA football season is starting to come to a close, and it actually is tonight. The College Football Playoff National Championship for what is the 4th time in a row. Again, we're going Cavaliers Warriors status, as it will be the Clemson Tigers taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide for the 4th straight time in the College Football Playoff. Last year it was not the championship, but it was in the semifinals. So Clemson, Alabama, this is going to be one of the better games, honestly, to this date. Alabama, for the longest time, we thought that they were just going to be completely unstoppable and no one was going to do anything to them. They've shown in the past little bit that they've had some kryptonite. Of course, they really just outclassed Oklahoma for the most part in the past game. But we saw against Georgia. Georgia had a 14-point lead for a large portion of the game. Of course, they came storming back under the leadership of Jalen Hurts after Tua Tagovailoa came out of the game and won the SEC championship. So Clemson, they are a capable football team. And this is the type of game that Clemson has the perfect opportunity. They could absolutely go in and Santa Clara, both teams going across the country. They have a chance to go in and actually beat this Crimson Tide team. I like Alabama to win. I like Tua Tagovailoa to be able to lead this Alabama team to a win like he has done all season long. But Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence with Clemson, you can't count them out right now. I like Alabama, but it'll be a tough game. It'll be fun to watch later on tonight. And of course, we'll go over the remaining games that we saw in the past week. Again, we saw the New Year's Six Bowls and countless others. So, of course, we'll start with those. Of course, we had. See, let me go back to where they are started. Okay, so on Wednesday, December 26th, we saw Minnesota take out Georgia Tech 34-10 in what seems to be Paul Johnson's last game as the Georgia Tech head coach. We saw TCU outlast California in overtime 10-7. The Boston College and Boise State game, the First Responder Bowl, was canceled due to lightning in the area, which was unfortunate because Boston College did have a lead going into the second quarter and going into the break. On Thursday, December 27th, we saw Duke just dominate Temple 56-27. Duke was one that at the beginning of the year I thought was a little bit overrated, but towards the end of the year I thought they were underrated. They went from being ranked and being a great team when they played a team like the Virginia Tech Hokies, and they ended up falling out of the rankings and really slipping a little bit, but they are still a good football team, improving it, finishing 8-5, and with a dominant win in the Independence Bowl. The New Era Pinstripe Ball, of course, played in Yankee Stadium. Wisconsin beat Miami 35-3. Wisconsin, again, missing out on the Big Ten Championship this year to Northwestern, who did get beat by the Ohio State Buckeyes. Baylor and Vanderbilt in the Academy Sports Texas Bowl. Baylor gets the win over Vanderbilt 45-38. Vanderbilt was one that I kind of was high on towards the end of the year. They got that big win to get into bowl eligibility. Of course, Baylor, they're on the up and up. They do get a win 45-38. On Friday, December 28th, we have Iowa State. They lost by 2 in the Alamo Bowl to the Washington State Cougars. Again, Washington State was one that I thought that towards the end of the year, if they could win out and they could win the Pac-12, and they had a decent chance to maybe get into the college football playoff. Of course, they did lose to Washington in the last game of the season, and that ended their chances. But they do get a win in the Alamo Bowl in the Alamo Bowl, beating the Iowa State Cyclones 28-26. Syracuse knocked off number 16 West Virginia. Syracuse ranked number 20. They beat West Virginia 34-18. Of course, we all know Will Grier did not play in this game. He wanted to be able to get ready for the NFL draft. He will be one of the quarterbacks that will be going. Of course, Justin Herbert, the big news from Oregon, he will be staying in Eugene. He will not go to the NFL draft. But Will Grier, he is going. So that was something he wanted to be prepared for. So he skipped down the game. Syracuse gets a win 34-18. Auburn just destroys Purdue 63-14. Jarrett Stidham 15 for 21 for 373 yards and 5 touchdowns. You heard me correctly, 5 touchdown passes from Jarrett Stidham against this Purdue Boilermakers defense. Purdue finishes 6-7, Auburn finishes 8-5, and again, the Music City Bowl belongs to the Tigers. On Saturday, December 29th, we saw the college football playoff. Oklahoma, Alabama. Alabama had a much bigger lead than what this ended up being, but Oklahoma fought back. Alabama wins 45-34. Kyler Murray rushing the ball was pretty impressive, but the story was Tua Tagovailoa, 24-27, 318 yards, and 4 touchdown passes. That's right, he threw more touchdown passes than he did incompletions. And then Clemson really showing that Notre Dame may not have belonged in the college football playoff. 30-3 was the final score. Trevor Lawrence, 327 yards, 3 touchdown passes. Travis Etienne, the running back for Clemson, of course, over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown. Notre Dame just was outclassed in this game, and again, it was one of the reasons why I've thought that they probably shouldn't have been in the college football playoff this year. Florida throttles Michigan 41-15. Shea Patterson for Michigan played pretty decently, but Florida wins the Peach Bowl on a New Year's Six Bowl, and of course, end of the season pretty strong for Florida. Finished 10-3. Both teams finishing 10-3. South Carolina and Virginia. Virginia has, of course, I've been high on Bryce Perkins in the quarterbacking for the Cavaliers all season long, and he they finish with a resounding 28-0 win. Scored 7 in each quarter, of course. South Carolina, they had no answers for the offense, and they couldn't score on the UVA defense. Of course, Virginia, big win in the Belk Bowl. In the Nova Arizona Bowl, we have Nevada taking out Arkansas State by 3. Nevada wins 16-13 over Arkansas State. On December 31st, of course, New Year's Eve, we did have Northwestern and Utah in the Holiday Bowl. Northwestern gets the win over the Pac-12 champions Utah, 31-20. In the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, we had Texas A&M taking on NC State, and Texas A&M finished and won this game big. 52-13 was the final score. Kellen Mond, average stats, but it was Travion Williams out of the backfield for the Aggies, who finished with 236 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Of course, big win. They set a record in the Gator Bowl, and they beat the Wolfpack 52-13. In the Liberty Bowl, Oklahoma State takes out Mizzou in a game that I was kind of surprised happened. Of course, Drew Lock from Missouri has been an underrated guy for most of the year. Missouri actually probably overachieved in their football this year, finished 8-5, and with a loss to Oklahoma State again, who kind of took a step back from what we normally see them at, but they finished 7-6. In the Military Bowl, Cincinnati and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech finishes 6-7 with a losing record. But again, the important thing is they kept the bowl streak, the bowl appearance streak. Again, it kind of hurts because this was a season that a lot of fans had as championship aspirations, at least ACC championship aspirations, and they fall to 6-7, losing to Cincinnati, who wins 35-31 in the Military Bowl. Stanford and Pittsburgh in the Sun Bowl. Stanford wins 14-13 without Bryce Love. Bryce Love did the same thing that Will Greer did, and the same thing that Christian McCaffrey did, another Stanford running back a couple years before, skipping out on their bowl game. Ironically, McCaffrey and Bryce Love both skipping the Sun Bowl, as Stanford does just enough to get by Pittsburgh 14-13. In the Red Box Bowl, we had Oregon taking out Michigan State 7-6. Again, Oregon getting some good news with Justin Herbert coming back for another season, as he will finish out his career with the Ducks before going to the NFL draft, and they get a win in a low-scoring game, 7-6 over the Spartans. Texas and Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. This was a high-profile game as Georgia felt they were snubbed trying to get to the college football playoff. They were 11-2. They had just played Alabama better than anybody had all season long. But Texas, I don't know. I guess they felt a little bit disrespected because they go in, they beat Georgia 28-21 as they finished 10-4 on the season. And this is a big accomplishment here for the Longhorns team. It's the first 10-win season in almost a decade now, and Texas, with a big win over Georgia, proves that maybe Georgia didn't belong in the college football playoff after all. Ohio State and Washington, and Urban Meyer's last game as the Buckeyes head coach in the Rose Bowl. They got a win over the Washington Huskies, 28-23. Of course, the big question will be coming up in the upcoming weeks is, will Dwayne Haskins stay with the Buckeyes, especially now Justin Fields for the Georgia Bulldogs has just announced that he will be transferring to Ohio State to play for the Buckeyes next year. So that's something to look out for. Will Dwayne Haskins go, and will Justin Fields take over? LSU and UCF in the Fiesta Bowl. UCF trying to continue their claim as the undisputed national champions, going undefeated for almost 2 years now. They lose to LSU though. LSU gets a big win, 40-32 over the Knights, and the story of the game, Joe Burrow for the LSU Tigers, 394 yards and 4 touchdown passes against the Knights defense. So 40-32 is the final score in the Fiesta Bowl, and UCF loses the longest active winning streak in NCAA. In the Citrus Bowl, we had Kentucky outlasting Penn State. Again, Kentucky was one that looked like they were a solid SEC East contender, and when they ran into Georgia, they stumbled, and of course they lost big to Tennessee as well, but they ended up in the Citrus Bowl knocking off a decent Penn State team, 27-24. McSorley for Penn State was another one, but let's look at Benny Snell Jr., 144 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, and the Wildcats, they're in a decent spot setting up for next year. And rounding it out was the Outback Bowl, Mississippi State and Iowa. Iowa wins over Mississippi State, 27-22. Mississippi State, a fantastic defense, we all know by now. But of course, Iowa gets the win here. Their quarterback throws for 3 touchdowns. Nate Stanley. Nick Fitzgerald was the leading rusher in the game for 103 yards. Again, he's the quarterback of the Bulldogs from Mississippi State. He finishes with 103 yards and a touchdown, but it's not enough as the Iowa Hawkeyes get the win. So that's going to do it for bowl season, of course. That is, until, except for the College Football Playoff Championship that will be happening tonight. That will be at 8 p.m. on ESPN. So that's something to look out for. Again, Clemson, Alabama should be a tough matchup and an exciting game to watch in the upcoming hours. That's going to do it for NCAA football. But of course, we're going on to NBA basketball. We're starting to get closer and closer to the All-Star game. And in fact, the All-Star game voting has been the first returns of the All-Star votes has been returned, of course, with some surprising results so far. In the front court for the Eastern Conference, we shouldn't be surprised. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kawhi Leonard, Joel Embiid lead the Eastern Conference for the starting lineups, and those three have been impressive so far this year. I don't know if Joel should be as high as the three, but of course he's had some monster games as well, so no, shout out to him, no disrespect meant by that. In the guards, we have Kyrie Irving, Dwayne Wade being second in the voting. Of course, Dwayne Wade hasn't been himself, but of course the reason why he's getting so many votes is because it will be his last season in Miami, and the fans obviously want him to be in the starting lineup and want him to be in the All-Star game for the last time. Kemba Walker is right behind him, and Ben Simmons at number 4. In the Western Conference, we have LeBron James at number 1. Who can be surprised about that? But the biggest surprise is number 2, right behind him, at Luka Doncic is the number 2 getting vote getter in the front court. Which again, I don't know. I don't agree with that. It's a great story, but at the same time, Luka has been having a good rookie season, but he's not number 2 vote getter in the Western Conference. Good. So Kevin Durant right behind him, Anthony Davis. And again, if it goes to show just how these votings go, we see DeMarcus Cousins at number 10 in the front court. Of course, DeMarcus Cousins, he hasn't stepped foot on the court this year, so it's a lot of people are voting just for big names. And the guards, we have Stephen Curry at number 1, who has been phenomenal this year, averaging just around 30 points a game. Then we have Derrick Rose at number 2. Again, this is another one that I don't necessarily really agree with. Derrick Rose, it's a great comeback story. Was an MVP back in Chicago. Tears his ACL, has some knee problems that nag him over some time, and he's been on a phenomenal start with the Timberwolves this year. Has a 50-point game under his belt. But number 2 in the West, I don't necessarily agree with that. James Harden is the number 3 spot right behind him, and Russell Westbrook at number 4. Again, I don't think Russell should be as high as he is either, because he has had really not that. Again, it's funny. I always say this to people. I say that Russell has not been having that greatest season, yet he's still, I believe, averaging a triple double. But it's not the same Russell that we're used to seeing, of course. So, All-Star right around the corner. We're seeing some teams again separate themselves from the pack. Of course, in the Western Conference, the Wild Wild West. When I say separate, that can mean by literally a game. In the Eastern Conference, we'll start with them though. The Toronto Raptors are at the number 1 spot at 30-12. The Milwaukee Bucks are right behind them at 27-11. Number 3 is the Indiana Pacers at 26-13. Number 4 is the Philadelphia 76ers at 26-14. Number 5 is the Boston Celtics at 23-15. Number 6 is the Miami Heat at 19-19. Number 7 is the Brooklyn Nets at 20-21. Number 8 is the Charlotte Hornets at 19-20. And behind them, falling out of the playoff in the top 8 seeds, is the Detroit Pistons at 17-20. So who am I surprised by and who am I not surprised by? I'm pleasantly surprised by the Brooklyn Nets. After the injury to Karis LeVert earlier in the year, they have found a way to get back into the top 8. And of course, from about 6 to 8, those spots are open to almost anybody in the conference. So Charlotte is there. I think Charlotte's a better basketball team than their record says as well. Brooklyn's pretty good. As of right now, they've won 3 straight. Miami, they're trying to get into the playoffs for Dwayne Wade's last and final season in a Heat uniform. And then in the top 5, that's where you start to see your top 5 separate. Toronto's been impressive. Milwaukee's been impressive. Boston still has potential to get back towards the top. And yeah, so like I said, the final 3 spots are open for almost anybody in the East, and it'll be interesting to see who can jump in. It might even be like the Western Conference last year, where it comes down to the last possible day. And moving on to that Western Conference, which is, in my opinion, is if not the one of the greatest and most tough conferences in not just NBA history but sports history. Number one is the Denver Nuggets, leading the Western Conference 26-11. They will play the Houston Rockets tonight. Number two is the Golden State Warriors at 26-14. Number three is the Oklahoma City Thunder at 25-14. Number four is the LA Clippers at 23-16. Number five is the Houston Rockets at 22-16. The Rockets have won, I believe I saw it was 12 out of the last 13 games, or 12 out of the last 14, something like that. Number six is the San Antonio Spurs at 23-17. They've won 4 straight. Number 7 is the Portland Trail Blazers at 23-17. And number 8 is the Los Angeles Lakers at 21-19. Of course, the Lakers without LeBron James right now, they have who just suffered a little bit of an injury. They are missing him as they've lost 3 straight. Utah right behind them at 20-20 after starting off slow in the season. Sacramento has lost 4 straight after being off to an impressive start. And, of course, the biggest drop so far, Dallas, after being about 6th in the playoff race. At one point, they are 18-21 and close to the bottom of the conference, which just goes to show how tough that conference really is. The fact that a team that's sitting there, again, I do this every week, but I want to compare this. I believe, let's see, that is 1, 2, 3, about 3 to 5 teams in the Western Conference could be in the playoffs. About 35 teams that are out of the playoffs in the Western Conference could possibly be in the playoffs if they were in the Eastern Conference. So that just goes to show how tough of a conference the West is and how wild that West is. Well, that's going to do it here on Hot Takes with Holmes from Radio Free Radford. If you like what you heard, then be sure to like our Facebook page, where we'll update all that goes on here on Hot Takes with Holmes. Again, whenever I find out the show time, we're getting close to figuring out what time we will be going live on Radio Free Radford. So if you like what you hear on the show, again, like our Facebook page. I'll let you know on there as soon as I find out what that is and what time slot that will be. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. It's where our broadcasts go up. It's where our past broadcasts. So if you maybe want to go back and check out some of our past broadcasts, then be sure to do that on our YouTube channel and give us a quick subscribe while you're there. And of course, on our Facebook page, we will let you know whenever we upload the videos onto our YouTube channel. So of course, again, follow or like and subscribe to those channels. That's going to do it for me. So for my co-host Isaiah Adair, I'm Blake Holmes, and we'll see you next week here on the YouTube channel.